Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Industry Perspectives. I'm your host, Ainsley Bowden, and in this episode, I'm speaking with Jez Corden from Windows Central. Now, I was fortunate enough to meet Jez at E3 in 2019, and since then, we've chatted a few times about things gaming industry related. And so I sat down with Jez to talk about how he got into gaming, what led him to blog writing, and eventually Windows Central, the growth of the outlet, and what Xbox is doing in the industry, whether it be Game Pass, xCloud, or other things. We also cover gaming sites, algorithms, YouTube, Google. We get into it all. Let's jump in. All right, we're kicking off with Jez from Windows Central. Jez, man, I know it's been a little while since we chatted, man. It's good to have you on. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. It's all good. Been a very busy Monday for news.
Yes.
I don't know when this video is going to go out, but on the 15th of March, Xbox decided to dump an avalanche of news on game journalists today, which was fun and nice to see, but, a lot of work.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, it's a bit crazy. So this will go live tomorrow, so it won't be long. But yeah, man, it's as we record this, at least my time, it's only mid-afternoon, and it's been a day already. So
yeah, it's crazy.
I did actually already load up Prey because I played it at launch. I played it on my PC about a few months ago, and then I just loaded up earlier with the FPS boost and the auto HDR. And I'm telling you, man, it makes my PC version look weak. Like, it looks so much better. It's unbelievable how much of an improvement it is.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, it didn't even download a patch. I don't even know how they do this stuff. Like, I was expecting it to download the whole game again or something, but no, I was just like, oh no, it's FPS boosted, and it just happens. I don't know the technical details on how they achieve this. I think Jason Ronald went into it. The Xbox architect went into it on a podcast at some point. I need to do my research, but it's a pretty special feature, man.
It's incredible. I mean, that entire team over there, I joked in one of my articles, I called them wizards. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable what they're accomplishing with the backwards compatibility. As Carl that writes for our site likes to say, it's a masterclass, and how to do this. It's crazy. But anyway, yeah, we'll obviously, with us talking, we'll talk about Xbox and some of what's going on with, it goes without saying with Bethesda and the Game Pass announcements and everything else. They're firing on all cylinders right now, which is great to see. So we'll obviously touch on it a little more later. But before we do that, of course, one thing I really wanted to touch on, I know when you came onto our podcast a few months back, we talked real briefly about your gaming history, but I think for people listening to this and kind of understanding how you got where you are today, what as a kid or what got you into games initially? Like, when did that point in your life hit where you really loved video games and kind of felt that passion for it?
Man, I'm really lucky because I got there's a lot of techies in my family, I guess.
Okay.
And my earliest gaming exposure was I was about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years old. And my mom's brother, my uncle, had an Atari 2600.
Beautiful.
With the wood finish.
Of course, yeah.
And the awfully unresponsive joysticks. Even as a tiny child, I remember thinking, man, these joysticks are unresponsive. Even as a tiny child. But I was just hyped on just the, even though it was just little sticks bouncing around the screen, those sort of 8-bit sound effects or whatever they were, I was fascinated by that. And my parents, because I don't think you could even buy an Atari 2600 anymore. By the time I was like, Mom, I want one of these,
Okay.
So they got me a Sega Master System.
Yes, we're talking.
I don't know if were they called something else in America? Were they
called the Master System was the Master System. It's just that the Mega Drive here was called the Genesis.
Yeah, that was the one that was different. Well, I had the Sega Master System with Alex Kidd Miracle World built into it.
Classic.
And Sonic. I remember bathing in the glow of a cathode ray tube TV, black and white, in my living room. Struggling desperately to kill Robotnik as a little kid. I can't remember what. I remember getting so frustrated that twisting that square little controller, the Master System controller. Like I have this one boss, like in one of the later levels. I remember that was like my first gaming rage. I remember over one of those Robotnik boss fights. And then I killed him eventually, and I was like, yeah, and it felt so good. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally hooked on this now.
Yeah.
And then I went from that to, and then one of my neighbors got a Mega Drive or a Genesis, like the original one, the big chunky one with with the sliding volumes.
Yes, the headset volume, which I used to use as a kid with little headphones. Yeah.
They got one of those, and I was like, oh my god, the graphics are so much better on this.
Yep.
It almost looks real, you know. And like, and then I got a Sega. I don't think I got. Initially, I didn't get a Sega Mega Drive because my parents were like, well, you've got a Master System, you know. And like they couldn't tell the difference.
Of course.
And I was like, but man, this is so much better. But then I had appendicitis really bad. I was like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or something like that. I had appendicitis really bad. And it was so bad that I had like sepsis and stuff. I was really ill. And I was in hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks with these infections and stuff, because like I had like a burst appendix, but I just ignored it. And I was like, oh, it's just a bit of stomachache. Oh, it's just a bit of throwing up, you know. And I just ignored it, and I made myself really ill. And the doctor was like, he's only got a few hours to live.
Jesus.
I had to rush to the hospital and had all these operations. But while I was recovering, the hospital I was in, for some reason I was separated from all the other kids on the ward. I don't know why. I don't know if I weak immune system or something. I don't know why. But I was in like isolation for some reason, and they gave me a Super Nintendo with and it was my first exposure to Nintendo, because like I don't know why, like nobody I knew had a Super Nintendo for whatever reason.
So I don't know if you never played like the NES at any point?
No, I never touched. I didn't know anyone who had an NES or a Game Boy or anything like that. I don't know if they just like were less popular in Britain or something, but everyone I knew had Sega stuff. So but the hospital had a Super Nintendo, and it was my first exposure like to Mario All Stars. I played through all of those while I was in hospital. Super Metroid as well, which I absolutely adored that game.
Yep.
And also a weird game called Plock. You ever play Plock?
I don't know. That doesn't ring a bell.
Man, Plock was a weird game. If anyone listening to this remembers Plock, shout out. It's like Plock was like, look it up on YouTube later. Plock was this game where you played as a little red and yellow gremlin thing, and you attacked enemies by ripping your arms and legs off and throwing them at enemies. And like the enemies were like would vomit toenails on you and stuff like that. It was such a weird game. And
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, it was weird, man, and it was aggressively difficult.
Okay.
And the whole premise of the game was some monster had stolen your flag from your house, and you wanted to get it back.
Your flag?
It's about finding flags, man. It was such a weird game. It had great music though, like really memorable music. Like it's playing in my head right now. But like it just moved so much faster than like even the frame rate and stuff. It was even faster than like my neighbor's Mega Drive, and I was just like, man, I gotta have me one of these.
Of course.
And as a like getting well present when I got out of hospital, my parents got me a Super Nintendo.
Nice.
And then, man, I'm going through like the whole history now. This is potentially really super boring, but
no, you're good. This is what it's all about, man. This is what it's all about. I love it.
Oh man, I just defined stage of my life through what consoles I had.
Yeah, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah, and after Super Nintendo, I had PlayStation 1.
Okay.
And then like my siblings were old enough they started having their own consoles too. So like my brother would get an N64, I'd get a PS2, he'd get a Dreamcast and a GameCube, and I'd get a GameCube, and then it just sort of went on from there, you know. I had a PS2. I remember getting Silent Hill 2 for Christmas. That was my central Christmas present. God. Silent Hill 2.
Still one of the best horror games ever. Yeah. Love that game.
Strange gift to have for Christmas, but like,
That's true.
my parents just thought like they were all toys, and I was like,
Right.
yeah, I really need this super violent 18 rated video game, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's just a toy, and I was like, I don't know, maybe 12 years old or something when Silent Hill 2 came out,
Okay.
and I was like, I'd be sitting there like playing it with the sound off because it was so terrifying.
It was. It was.
I used to like put the radio on instead of listening to Akira Yamaoka's music. Like, really bad. But man. But then like I didn't play games for a long time.
Okay.
I did, but I didn't play like a wide variety of games. Like I ended up getting a gaming PC eventually.
Okay.
Like my parents had watched this TV show called Tomorrow's World.
Okay.
And Tomorrow's World is like a British documentary where it's cancelled now, I think. But it was a British documentary where they talk about future technology and robotics and stuff like that. And they got a lot of stuff wrong. But their report about the internet was bang on. And they were like, in the future, all businesses will be internet based, all jobs will be internet based, and a lot of them are, and my parents were like, oh wow, we better get our kids a computer if they're gonna have to keep up with the world and stuff. So I ended up with a PC that was good enough to run some games. So I switched over to Unreal Tournament,
of course,
and started playing PC games a lot more. Played Unreal Tournament 99 to death. I just played that like constantly for years. Yeah. And I just sort of ignored everything else that was going on in the gaming world. And then I was going out a lot more and playing games a little bit less here and there. And then like World of Warcraft came out right in the middle of my A-levels in high school.
Okay.
And so I failed on my A-levels because of World of Warcraft.
So for us in the US, that would be like your finals, your senior finals. For people who may not know what A-levels are. Yeah. Yeah,
17-year-old. Yeah. 17-ish when World of Warcraft came out. And it was the final year of high school, I suppose equivalent. And I had all these exams. And I remember my guild leader was like, Jez, we need you to fight Nefarian, which is this like evil dragon. Sure. And I was like, but dude, I got a geography exam. And he was like, yeah, but think of the loot, man. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I ended up yeah, I just started skipping exams and skipping school to play World of Warcraft. I was so addicted to this game.
Wow.
And I barely touched my 360.
Okay.
Because then when I was in high school, there was this and I think they still have it in Scotland and Northern Ireland maybe. But in England, they've cancelled this now for English kids. Sorry, English kids. But you used to get like $40 a week just for attending school. Kids did.
Okay.
Every kid in England whose parents earned below a certain amount, like poor kids basically, they get free money just for attending school. And the idea was that the money would help them, get the same kind of stuff and computers and to help them with their education.
Sure.
But we used to just spend it on crap. We used to take this money and we used to buy like remote control cars and just drive them around and smash them up and just leave them in the park. Like we were like teenagers. We didn't know what to do with money. And or just go to like expensive cake shop and buy like a massive like wedding cake and just all the kids we take it and we'd eat this like wedding cake that cost like hundreds of pounds, and we just all put our money together every Friday and just buy stupid stuff. But
oh my God,
I saved up some of mine and I bought my Xbox 360 with it. Was it the Xbox One? I don't know. God, I can't. Might be getting my Xboxes mixed up now. But I barely touched it though. My Xbox One and my Xbox 360, I didn't touch them for the longest time because of World of Warcraft.
Okay.
I did play the original Halo and I did own it. And we used to skip school and play Halo, split screen, all that stuff at lunch breaks and stuff like that. And we had a lot of fun doing that. But like a lot of the 360 original Xbox games that people will have like nostalgia for, I never played any of those. It was just I literally only owned Halo and I think Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence or something.
Snake Eater, I think it was.
Yeah, but they
you
released
talked about the offshoot one.
they released like I can't remember. They had like Metal Gear Solid 3, but then they released an updated version that had the free roaming camera because everyone hated the fixed camera.
You're right.
I can't remember. I had some version of Metal Gear Solid with my Xbox One anyway. My Xbox OG rather. But yeah, I barely touched the 360, and then World of Warcraft started going downhill a bit in the after Wrath of the Lich King was its height, and then they released Cataclysm, and loads of people just quit and got bored of it. So it was around then I got back into the 360 gaming. God, I would have been in my 20s by this point, and I discovered like all Mass Effect and Dragon Age and all those games that I sort of missed out on. I even went back and played some older games like Knights of the Old Republic, and
classic.
I sort of fell in love with console gaming again after the World of Warcraft addiction, and but I was still working minimum wage jobs at this point. I was a network technician for high school.
Okay.
I lied my way into that job. I don't know a damn thing about networking.
I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like, yeah, I know networking, and I just sort of faked my way through that job for like 5 years. But because my parents had bought me a PC, I like had the knowledge to acquire knowledge, in a very quick cadence. Like if I needed to know something about networking, you can just Google it, on the job. And I was just basically lying my way through this job. And I was just but it was like a small company for a charity, and there was like literally no way I could get like, I couldn't climb a ladder in this small company. So I was kind of like, I know this isn't forever. But like I also dropped out of high school, didn't go to university, no qualifications. What the hell do I do? With my life, like what is a long-term career for me, or am I just going to be like, jumping from minimum wage job to minimum wage job forever?
Sure.
So I don't know. Around the time, I knew someone who was a big Apple fanboy, and I think I talked about this before. But
yeah, I think you did mention that last time we talked.
Yeah, I was like, I knew this guy who was a big Apple fanboy, and man, I just never known anyone who was a fanboy of tech or a fanboy of consoles or something like that. Yeah. And he used to this guy he had like an Apple logo on his front door. He had like a Mac in every room. He had Steve Jobs' biography on his coffee table. And I just thought it was so cringy. Yeah. I was like, what the hell? This is so weird. Like, who would be a fanboy of a tech company, And so to irritate him, I got a Windows phone. I never really cared about phones or anything before. I had like some crappy Sony Ericsson just for calls and that. Yeah. But I didn't bother with any of that tech stuff really. And then I got a Windows phone, and I was just like, man, this is actually really cool. And then I sort of like, oh, now I get it now. I get why he's like this about tech, because it's kind of fascinating. And then I don't know. I just thought like when I was bored at work, because like if you're an IT technician, oftentimes a lot of the time you're just waiting for the phone to ring, right? Yeah. Someone to call you and say, oh man, there's something wrong with my computer, and you tell them to turn it off and on again. It really is like that. It really is. And I just made a blog at work, because in my teens I used to run websites, and I used to run a cartoon website and put animations on Newgrounds, and I had like a graphic design knowledge just from building websites and stuff. Yeah. So like to sort of retrain myself from modern web design, I decided to make a blog. And I thought, well, I play Xbox and I like Windows Phone. I like the way they connect with each other. I'll make a blog about the Microsoft ecosystem.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just did it surprisingly well, I guess. I immediately got a following on Twitter, and the Windows Phone community on Twitter was like super strong back then. The super. I mean, even now, like if I tweet something Windows Phone related from Windows Central account, it'll get thousands of likes. People have so much nostalgia for that.
Right.
And I just started building this blog, and then it just sort of like snowballed, and then because not Microsoft was spending so much money on Nokia PR.
Yeah.
And there was nobody really in the tech press who were covering Windows Phone. They had to come to me. And it was like, I was like, I don't know, this was like 10 years ago now or something. God, it's really been 10 years. But Nokia PR sent me an email and they were like, we want to fly you out to Barcelona to see the launch of the new Lumia 640, I think it was.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, why me? You know, I had like 300 followers at the time or something on Twitter. Like I was like, you know, and my blog was really small.
Sure.
But I was like, sure, you know, because not going to turn down a free trip to Barcelona, you know.
Of course.
And from that trip, we met with Nokia engineers and we interviewed them. It was just me and a bunch of like Instagrammers and hobby bloggers and stuff, and stuff like that. And some other influencers were there. Some of them are actually pretty big now, but like we were all sort of just like getting in on this free trip from Microsoft. You know, all expenses paid, sure, whatever. And we interviewed like someone from Nokia about like the future of Windows Phone and stuff. And then after the interview, there was like someone from Microsoft ushering everyone around, like, okay, now we're gonna do this, and now we're gonna go to the beach or whatever. And they wanted to take all the influencers and bloggers and whatever to the beach to do some kind of photo shoot thing. And I just sort of like I snuck away and went back to my hotel room because I hate the beach because I am very susceptible to sunlight. I am a nerd gamer and in the very stereotypical sense. And B, because I knew if I was the first person to get this interview up on Reddit, I could slap it on Windows Phone subreddit and you know, get a bunch of traffic for my blog. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. So I went to my hotel room and wrote that up and published it before I did anything else while they were all, you know, messing around or whatever. And then I put that on Reddit and it went straight to the top of the Windows Phone subreddit. And because of that, Daniel Rubino from Windows Central noticed me and he just off right there and then offered me a job.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, okay, I've got a job now. And that was it. And since then, I've been with Windows Central. So,
wow, yeah,
that was about 8 years ago now.
It just goes to show you, it can be all about the moment, right? Right place, right time.
Right place, right time, and you know, but you can make it the right place and make it the right time by working at it. Give yourself as many opportunities as possible. I used to write like 10 articles a day for my blog, just picking up every piece of news I could, writing editorials every day. You know, I was really going hardcore at it, but you know, I also had, you know, the luck that I had a job where you could get away with that, I guess, you know.
Okay.
But it was awesome to experience all that. Yeah. And then since that, like, you know, I've been traveling all over the world for Windows Central. It's all the stuff that I never thought I'd be able to do, like E3. Like I always thought about going to E3 and how amazing it would be, and I've done all that stuff now, and I never thought I would. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that like anyone can make it if you put the graft in, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And funny enough, I think I was just remembering, I don't even know if you remember this, but I think the first and only time I've met you in person was at E3 waiting for the Xbox conference to start.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember this because I said hi to you because I recognized you. And I was sitting right there near you. And you asked me if I wanted a picture because I was taking a picture of the stage. And you asked me if I wanted a picture. You remember that? And I have the picture right here. This is the picture you took of me.
Yeah, I remember that. That.
Yeah, it's hilarious, man. So it's just, again, time and place, right? And I think like literally in that row with me right there was like Colt, Tim, Sean LeBrie, a whole bunch of people from the guys that are always in the Xbox community talking. So yeah,
the Xbox community is just amazing. Like Tim Dog gets like so much hate across the internet, and he goes back and forth with, you know, some pretty toxic people, and you know, he has fun with it. But like since I was nobody, that guy has supported me through everything, even times when I've been like, I can't do this, and I've been really stressed out and thought about throwing in the towel multiple times. I really have. And Tim's always been like supportive and be like, nah, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
The dude's like got a heart of gold if not a dick. So,
no, in fact, it's
awesome
funny you mentioned that because two things on that is, as I was talking to Colt a couple weeks ago, and Colt I got to know at E3 the same year, 2019. I met Colt for the first time in real life and got to know him, and really nice guy, and we hung out with him. And but same exact thing with Tim for you is the first big article I wrote for Season Gaming that got real traction, was about Xbox, and I had like 30 followers, 40 followers on Twitter. And Tim kind of reached out to me and said, wow, this, you can write, and this is a great article. And he shared it with everyone. And I mean, it just blew up. And, for someone who never had anything kind of get traction like that before, it was huge. And he's always been a supporter since. So it is.
Colt's awesome too. I spoke to Colt in the airport, I think that year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Colt's a great guy too. It's just the Xbox community is just full of awesome people. And it's really tightly knit. You can speak to anyone and basically make friends.
You're right. It's and we talked about the same thing. There's this weird sense of kind of brotherhood within that group, which is hard to explain, but it's there for sure. Yeah. I
think Xbox does a good job of nurturing that with the Xbox Fan Fest, and the fact that like you can basically speak to pretty much anyone in the Xbox team just by @ing them on Twitter. You can't do that with Nintendo. You can't do that with Sony to the same degree, where you can literally just hit up anyone. And it's not just Xbox either; it's all of Microsoft. Like you can literally like you can send like the head of Surface a DM, and the chances are he will reply. You know. If you want to,
it's weird.
Don't spam him with DMs. No,
no. In fact, one of the things that I think I was with Colt about the same is like I love it and it's fantastic, and I wish that Sony and Microsoft did more of that, right? Or Sony and Nintendo, I'm sorry, did more of that. But at the same time, there's those people who it's like every time they think of an idea in their head, they're adding Phil or Aaron or someone, and it's like, all right,
Well, that's the thing. Like, you couldn't do what Phil and Aaron and Josh Stein and Jason Ronald do. You couldn't do what they do and engage with the community like they do unless you loved it.
That's
true. If you didn't love it, there's no way you could do this job. Sure. You couldn't do it. So it's because. I can tell you now, like, you just need to look at Phil's replies and see the amount of like fanboys and hate that come through to those people.
Yeah, it's sad.
And it's even worse if you're like a woman tweeting about Xbox or something like that. Some of the crap that goes around in this gaming community is really awful. So you really have to have a love for the positive fans out there to be able to put up with all of that.
Very true.
And it just goes to show, like, it's with that passion in mind that Xbox is doing so well right now.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I mean, you nailed it. So we kind of you ended there on Windows Central. So how long have you been with Windows Central officially now? How long ago was that?
I think it's literally just past 8 years, I want to say.
Okay.
Is that 8 years now or 7 years?
So, I mean, we're coming up on 8 years since Xbox One launched, which seems crazy.
Yeah, it was the year that Xbox One launched.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess it is 8 years. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
Well, it's been really cool to witness the growth, man. As someone, I say this to other content creators when we talk as well, but as someone who kind of runs an outlet on, a much, much, much smaller outlet, but runs an outlet and know what it takes to, what goes into it from all aspects. It's not easy, and it's been incredible to see the growth that you've had, not only personally but for Windows Central, and now including Windows Central on YouTube, right? You guys have had fantastic growth over there.
Yeah, Miles Dompierre, I've probably pronounced that wrong, sorry, Miles. Miles has been amazing growing our channel. I like making videos, but it's not what I'm passionate about.
Right.
So like when I make videos, it's kind of forced or kind of rushed. Like you can just see the delta between like the videos that I put on Windows Central and the videos Miles puts on Windows Central in terms of like the editing quality. Miles is just so much better than me.
He does really
and he's
good work.
been he's been crushing the growth on that channel. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I actually reached out to him last week and chatted with him in DMs a little bit. So it's just a good group of guys, man. You guys are killing it. So
it's awesome. It doesn't feel like a job with Windows Central. Like we're all mates. You know, we're all like we all get on really well. I think a lot of blog sites, especially some of the older, bigger blogs that like have like maybe high turnover and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe less of a camaraderie. I get that sense sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, but Windows Central is, you know, we're all mates. You know, we were before Future purchased Windows Central. Even though like we scattered all over the world, the writers, the previous company that owned Windows Central, Mobile Nations, they would like pay to fly everyone to like go on vacation together. You know, we all went to Florida a couple of years ago before the purchase. We went to Florida, hung out, drinking, stuff like that, partying, getting in trouble with the hotel staff and making too much noise.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and we also went to Georgia, Atlanta, one year.
Oh, Atlanta!
We went on a boat, and we had like the Xbox One briefcase with a TV in it. On the boat.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You know,
that's awesome.
It's been some awesome times.
I was going to ask you about that. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but you know, some of the conversations I've had with some of the others has been the because I've spoke to like Ace at Game On Daily as they're growing over there, right? And I speak to Cog all the time over at Lords, and you know, Joe over at Trophy Room, and just you know, people who are trying to grow in different angles, right? And I know for me, and I think you know this because we've talked about it, but you know, the whole kind of background of seasoned gaming is a pure hatred for clickbait and just you know nonsense journalism, right? And so for me, it's been really a challenge to look at the prioritization for growth, right? And I think you guys have done that really well. But you touched on how like you're passionate much more, it feels like, about writing and articles and things of that nature, where someone like Miles is much more attuned to editing and YouTube. But you know, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing with a lot of the sites across the industry, and just that kind of almost incessant need for these sites to push clickbait, to push narratives, to kind of push the bickering among the worst of us in the community on a daily, monthly basis, you know, like because one of the things I appreciate about what you guys do, even being a much bigger site, is that you know you're much more factual in your reporting, which I really appreciate, of course, and I think a lot of people do. But you know, what are your thoughts on how that looks industry wide?
I appreciate that immensely, but it's kind of like the thing about Windows Central is there's always been pushback, because from the people who run the site at the top level, not so much in Future actually, but in our previous company, Mobile Nations, there was a period where the higher ups were like desperate for growth, and they were pushing all of Android Central, imore.com, and Windows Central, Android, Windows, Apple stuff. They were pushing us to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, we all push back on it, because it's like, this is not a sustainable way to grow reputation, you know. But you know, some sites, like, they don't have that privilege, the ability to do that, because they'll get fired, you know. It's kind of like with Windows Central, we're such a small team. It's like, what you're going to do, fire us? And then who's going to do your work for you, you know?
All right.
But even then, there's sometimes you have to write things to pay the bills. Like, you know, if I look on Windows Central now, there's like a huge deals block underneath. That stuff pays the bills a lot more than, you know, writing about Xbox news does. It's just the way the industry's gone, you know.
Yeah.
We've got a deal for, you know, hopefully some of these deals are useful, but like sometimes they're often just not. But they still pay they still pay the bills, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like save 50% on the JLab Audio Epic Air True Wireless earbuds with ANC. Like, you know, that's like a lot of people would consider that to be blog spam, but it, you know, keeps the lights on, which is important. But at the same time, when it comes to clickbait and websites that maybe don't see, tech sites often don't clickbait as much as maybe some of the other sites, because they do have the ability to post deals, which sort of takes the need out of clickbaiting. If you're a completely ad-based business, you're trying to get as many clicks as possible, where if you're like a deal-based blog, then one click is enough, you know, as long as a few people buy, then it's fine, you know. But if you're an ad-based business, then you need as many clicks as possible, because ads don't pay much by themselves. And honestly, it's a wider societal issue. It's not even a new issue.
No.
If you look at the British tabloid press in the 90s, for example, well, even now, you know, if you look at what the British tabloid press did to like Princess Diana in the 90s, all the bullshit and all the, you know, real life clickbait, but it's like you plaster like a massive stupid headline because you want people to buy your newspaper, you know. And like a newspaper is literally a completely ad-based business model. Like you can't buy a deal through a newspaper. You have to, like, they want you to look at the ads, and to be able to sell ads they need volume, and to be able to get the volume they sort of prey on people's fears, insecurities, and, you know, baser instincts, unfortunately. And it's that tabloid model which is sort of proliferated across to the internet.
You're right.
And it's sort of exacerbated by the way YouTube and Google set up its algorithms, because Google controls the whole internet. It controls the whole internet. It's up to Google whether your website lives and dies. It's up to Google whether your YouTube channel lives and dies. That's the way it's always been, and maybe the way it always will be, unless some kind of very clever government in the future figures out a way to regulate Google without breaking the whole internet. But, you know, we're seeing the Australian government trying to do this now. Australia is trying to persuade Google and Facebook to pay blogs for the news they host on their pages and stuff. And, you know, France has tried to do this in the past too. And when France tried to do it, what happened was those websites saw a massive drop in traffic and saw a massive drop in profitability, because Google was like, oh, okay, well, we just won't pay you. We just won't host your news then, rather than pay you. And then if they don't host the news, then boom, they get no traffic, and boom, they get no money. Right. So it's a very strange problem that sort of hinges on the complete lack of understanding our politicians have about the way the internet works and the way the internet impacts the fabric of society, frankly. Very true. There's a load of great documentaries about this, like Adam Curtis. You can look up Google Adam Curtis, look him up on Wikipedia. Some of these recent documentaries about like the way the media spins things to create narratives to make them more sellable. You know, a news story by itself is not interesting for most people. You have to embellish. You have to have a photograph with it. You have to have a dramatic photograph with it. You know, some of the biggest Pulitzer Prize winning photographs are taken out of context, but they tell a story. But they're often taken out of context, or they're missing context. But they connect with us on some sort of primal sort of way. This is getting philosophical now. They connect with us on some sort of primal way that is marketable and monetizable ultimately. And that's ultimately, everything's just sort of driven by money. So when you see these websites, bringing it back to gaming, when you see websites that are sort of, there's always been this conspiracy theory in the Xbox community that the media doesn't give Xbox a fair shake. And I don't think there's I don't think there's like a conspiracy against Xbox. I think it's just a natural sort of the way the media falls when the bigger audience is PlayStation oriented. So why wouldn't the news be PlayStation oriented? Right. The news often reflects the audience, you know. If the audience was like, we don't like this, then the coverage would flip, So it's like it's a constant battle and a constant sort of it's a feedback loop. Like the audience dictates to the media what kind of coverage they want, and the media reflects it back to them, and it becomes like this feedback loop. So breaking that cycle is sort of, it's increasingly difficult.
Yes, it
because
is.
Because of the age of like fake news. And if you start trying to deliver facts to people, they'll tell you your facts are fake, and they'll just choose to they'll opt for news that makes them feel good.
Yes. People want bias reaffirmation, right? They want to hear someone else say what they believe because it makes them feel better about their beliefs. I mean,
and because YouTubers are individuals and there's no oversight whatsoever. Nobody's telling a YouTuber like, man, maybe you shouldn't make content like this. The only thing that tells a YouTuber what kind of content to make is the algorithm. Yep. And if the algorithm's telling them to make clickbait, then they make clickbait. For a YouTuber or even a blogger or whatever to make content that isn't clickbait oriented is very difficult, because you have to basically find your own audience. The algorithm won't do that for you. The algorithm won't present you with non-clickbait content a lot of the time. Google is trying to get better at this. They are starting to punish websites that are sort of blatant clickbait factories or blatant SEO factories. Websites that just sort of, they look up, like every blog does this. Search engine optimization is very important for profitability of a blog, but there are some websites that just really take the piss with it, and they really do. And Google's starting to look at those websites and start to punish them a little bit for it, and they're trying to look at content that is a little bit more human, a little bit more less robotic, and a little bit more like quality, and hopefully Google will sort of get to a point where they can shape the web in a way that's a little bit more positive. But as for right now, I think it's ultimately a hustle. I can't blame someone necessarily for running with clickbait, because Google makes it profitable to do that sometimes.
It's very true.
So ultimately it's on Google, and it's also like a societal problem that if people didn't click on clickbait, then there would be no clickbait. So it's a feedback loop,
It is. It drives me, the worst thing I see every day on Twitter, I don't know about you, but it's like I mute a lot of people, the toxic ones, and I just try and stay away from it. And then, I see like someone I do follow retweet someone saying, look at this garbage, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, I purposely didn't want to see that garbage. That's why I muted it. But now you're retweeting it. You're part of the problem.
Yeah. It's social media is still really immature, and it's sort of like it's still something that people are figuring out, and Facebook is not accepting any responsibility for the damage it's done to the polarization of society. I've never known a time in my life where and I suppose I'm not really that old, but I often wonder, is there ever been a time in history where people are so polarized? It feels like everything now, you have to have an opinion on it, and it has to be an extreme opinion one way or the other, or else you make everyone mad, and things can't be like shades of gray or nuanced anymore, because the algorithm can't process nuance. It needs things to be in a binary. Like the internet is literally binary. It's literally made of digital code, and it just sort of works on this binary, principle that isn't congruous with human nature. It's getting philosophical, man.
No, you're exactly right, though. That's why I'm not interrupting you, because you're nailing it. And it's funny you actually just said it the way you did, because I don't know if it was in one of these conversations I had. I literally have a notebook. I have it right here. I have a notebook that I use for work, and you can't see it, but there's scripting all across here in different languages. And what it literally translates to is life is not always black and white. And it's excuse me, it's exactly that. It's like everything wants you to either pick a team or pick a side, and everyone's here or here. When in reality, as you well just said, almost everything in life lives in the gray. You know, there's nuance, there's context, there's all these other things that go into any of this discussion, whether we're talking about the gaming industry or outside of it, as you are.
Yeah. It's potentially just human nature to have the sort of this binary thought processes towards, you know, things. You know, it could be emergent as a result of evolutionary imperatives to survive. You know, it could be like a defense mechanism or whatever. But the problem is, like, the people who know, they can exploit that and monetize it and package it and post it, you know, and make money on it. And the people in power are going into overdrive, exploiting that sort of fear of the other right now to keep us all distracted from the fact that they're completely destroying the world. You know, it's getting dark now. But, you know, it's
wait, we're gonna have to lighten it up a little bit. You're right. Not that I'm disagreeing with you. Yeah,
it's you know, it's just funny because you can bring it, you can apply any sort of these concepts to gaming and the tribalism and the toxicity. People take like sports fandom too far too. Like sports is like a lot more mature than gaming fandom, I think, in that like people will banter over their favorite football teams and stuff like that, and it's all fine. Usually people get drunk and they get rowdy, but usually there's not like anything super violent that comes out of it. But sometimes, a lot of the time, you know, you'll see like the World Cup whenever the World Cup was last. I have no concept of time anymore. But I remember when the last World Cup happened, there was like some British fans in France, and they all got drunk, and all the men got into a big fight over football. Of course. And then it becomes like, you know, there's sort of ancient rivalry between England and France and stuff like that. And then, like, you know, football hooliganism in the UK. It's like those same fans who were like, yeah, we'll go and fight the French. Then they go home and then they fight each other over like their local football teams. Like there's like football hooliganism in the UK is like legendary for its violence. And you know, there's all those movies like Football Factory and stuff like that, which are awesome movies, but it's very scary because like all this stuff is like based on real events. Like, you know, and people will ultimately, they want to fight and want to be tribal. Maybe it's just innate, but it's just so silly when it's over games, which are supposed to be fun, and they are ultimately toys. You know, it just feels so arbitrary and silly. But it's
in the grand scope of it, right? I mean, we're talking about entertainment. Yeah, you know, it's not. Yeah, I agree with you.
They do get on Twitter and like hate on people they've never even met over all this stuff, and they get so in their feelings about it and so upset and annoyed about it, and it's just like, man, you know, it's like I barely have time to play all the games that you're mad about. You know, like who has the time to be mad about games? Just go and play them. You know.
Yeah, it's it's bizarre. I've given up trying to really figure it out. You know, if I see anything like that, I joke all the time. I have like over 1,000 accounts muted. I just mute them, move on. I don't have time.
Yeah, I have like 6,000 people blocked because I just.
I'm sure you probably have to, because you've probably heard it. You know, these same type of people.
Yeah, I have. You know, I block instead of mute because I feel like I want to punish you for being this way. You know, I want to show you that I don't want to have to deal with you, because I use Twitter for fun. I don't use it professionally. And sometimes when I block people, they'll be like really mad about it, and they'll be like, oh, you're stifling free speech and discourse. And it's like,
gosh,
dude, I use Twitter for fun and you're making it not fun. So you are being blocked. You know, I block people for all sorts of arbitrary reasons, but it ultimately falls on, are you making this a negative experience for me? And I don't know. There's just some people you just can't get through to.
No,
like they want to be mad. Yeah, it's not worth it. They just want to be mad. Like if someone is so dead set on being mad about about gaming or something, there's just nothing you can do to change an adult's mind a lot of the time if they're not open to it. And you can tell when someone's not open to it because they've already become mad in the first place over plastic.
Yeah,
it's just
they're already mad, and their mind is already made up of whatever argument they want to get into at that moment in time.
Yeah, like when I was first on Twitter, I would banter about like Xbox versus PlayStation all the time, but then like I realized how seriously people take it, and now I just don't mention PlayStation at all. I was like, man, like people really take this stuff seriously.
Yeah,
like I don't have a PlayStation. I have no intention of buying one, just because like all the games I want to play are on Xbox, you know, and the games that I do want to play on PlayStation aren't worth to me to buy a console for. I bought a PlayStation 4 and ultimately regretted it because I only played Last of Us on it and God of War on it. And I was just like, did I buy a whole console just for 2 games, you know? But that's the thing. It's like if I was a PlayStation fan or I'd already bought like 1,000 games on PlayStation, I'd feel the same way about Xbox. There's ultimately not that much of a difference between the two. It's just about whichever side you ended up on when the digital shift happened.
Yeah, which has kind of cemented people's place in that ecosystem. Exactly. Yeah. No, I feel the same way. And again, like at the end of the day, we're talking about games. You buy whatever games you want to play. It doesn't really matter where they reside.
It should be fun.
Yeah, it's about fun. So, but I was also going to ask you about, you know, now that everything we've talked about with the growth of Windows Central and your own personal career, the channel, and everything that's happened, you know, obviously you're very prominent in the Xbox community now. What's it like been working with Xbox directly, like their press support, the people you interact with? I mean, they seem like a genuinely good group of people to kind of cover, you know, their content and materials and hardware and all those things.
Yeah, Xbox has been like tremendously supportive over the years, you know, like, you know, not just like game codes and stuff like that, but you know, they just engage a lot more. I think the Xbox press operation is just bigger than a lot of other companies. Like trying to contact EA for me is sometimes like trying to get blood out of a stone. But I think that's just because there's so many people who want to get their attention, you know. Like EA makes some of the biggest games in the world, and maybe they're not the biggest PES team, or maybe they just, you know, don't like the fact that I hate them so much for what they did to Bioware. I don't know, but the good thing about Xbox is like, no matter what I publish, like even if I publish a string of negative articles, which is something I often do about Xbox, I give Xbox a hard time a lot of the time.
No, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about you is that Xbox has a lot going for them, right? I mean, we'll touch on all the positives here in a second, but there's still plenty of things they can work on and improve. And you're one of the few people that I see calling that out just matter of factly, which I love.
It's like I take my role and my position in this community seriously. You know, I see it as a blessing. I don't try not to take it for granted, because ultimately I can amplify the voices of those who aren't heard. And one thing that I was very passionate about championing recently was the fact that Xbox's localization in other countries is pretty damn poor.
It's bad.
And if they want to be a global company and they get on stage and speak to their shareholders, these delusions of grandeur about hitting 3 billion gamers, 2 billion gamers, whatever it is, why is your language support so bad in other regions? Why are you pushing xCloud in South Korea when the South Koreans can't even tell which games are localized in Korean? You know, it's bullshit. No other game journalist covered this because ultimately they're not Xbox fans and they're not interested in you know, covering that aspect of the ecosystem, because you really have to be in the weeds and in the community to understand what the community is mad about. It's like the whole achievement stuff right now too. Like a lot of people in the Xbox achievement community are annoyed that achievements have been basically abandoned since they added rare achievements. Stale. They haven't done anything with it for the longest time. And I realize that some of these changes are not trivial to make, but at the same time, if you're a platform holder, you kind of have to make them. And Microsoft's $1 trillion company, and it's hard to accept any kind of excuse from a company that's as big as and as rich as is as blessed as Microsoft
Yep.
They have like no room for excuses here. So even though like I do often write pretty scathing articles, like I wrote like about 4 articles about the Microsoft Store on Windows 10 being complete trash, and it's still trash.
Yeah.
And even though I do all that, they take it on the chin and they take it as feedback. Whereas I know for a fact that other companies like Apple and Sony, they would cut you off if you wrote, especially Apple, if you wrote like negative reviews about Apple's products, they cut you off, which is why you can never trust any review of an Apple product, because they will cut you off. Like if you want like objective Apple reviews, you have to go to like Linus Tech Tips and stuff like that, but people who actually buy the product. Because Apple, like whoever Apple send reviewing this to, you ain't getting a fully objective review, because all those journalists and bloggers know Apple will cut you off permanently if you transgress. If you slip too far from the message they want you to deliver, they will cut you off. But Microsoft just ain't like that.
No.
I suppose part of it is potentially because Microsoft comes from a position of weakness in terms of its corporate image. Like a lot of people still see Microsoft as this big evil company, and like if I went shouting on Twitter, Microsoft cut me off, whatever, people would probably be mad, and like that'd break the illusion that Microsoft's a rainbows and sunshine company now. But I genuinely don't get that impression from them. I just feel like there's a lot of people at Microsoft right now who are trying to run the company in a sort of human way, and not the sort of robotic corporate way that it was under Steve Ballmer when the share price was at the lowest point that it ever was, in Microsoft's history. God, I wish I bought Microsoft shares.
Me too. But no, I think you're spot on. I mean, Nadella is he's one of my favorite leaders across basically any industry. I always love hearing him speak. And I think, in my opinion, he's done some really transformative things for Microsoft to date.
He has. I think the best thing Nadella did was sort of pivoting on this idea of wanting to be Apple. I think Steve Ballmer was really hung up on the fact that Apple sort of beat them to the mobile industry.
Yeah.
And Ballmer was like, spent a lot of years trying to chase that. The Surface RT was basically their answer to the iPad. Windows Phone, used to be the biggest mobile platform in terms of what you could consider a smart palm device or whatever. And then the iPhone just crushed them into dust. And I don't think Steve Ballmer ever got over that. They really needed a fresh perspective. And I think like when, they started, when Microsoft was on stage Microsoft was on stage at Apple's conference to announce Office was going to iPad. That was really the big turning point in Microsoft's philosophy of let's bring our services to people where they are, rather than try and pull them to us. And that's what Game Pass is about, really.
Exactly.
Game Pass is Xbox's Office. Game Pass is like going to be the product that Microsoft wants to put everywhere. And similarly to the way you can get Office anywhere. You can get Office on any phone, any tablet device. You can get it on the web, on any platform. And the way that Microsoft has turned Office from this sort of insular offline product, box product that you buy in a shop, to this sort of massive service platform that's, on par with Netflix for like its size. That's what Microsoft wants to do with Game Pass for gaming. Is they want to turn it into their Office. It's their service pillar for entertainment, So it's really that Nadella way of thinking, and it's sort of credit to Phil Spencer for sort of threading the needle and sort of making Xbox fit into Nadella's needle effectively, because like Phil went on the record and said something like Nadella didn't understand why Microsoft was in gaming. Yeah. So Phil had to, So Nadella was like, we don't understand why we're in gaming. It's a really volatile industry. The cash flow is erratic, blah, blah, blah. The hardware doesn't make any money. Like, why are we in gaming? So what Phil's job essentially was, we have to make Xbox fit Nadella's worldview, which is, empower others to do more, i.e. forget about the endpoint, bring the service to their endpoint, So while Microsoft is, and Phil very cleverly, and well, the whole Xbox team really, Phil really hates it when you like credit him for doing everything.
He does, yes.
He really hates that, but like, and it's true. You know, Xbox is a huge team,
Yeah.
but if we just sort of referring to the whole era where Phil Spencer was leading, and we got to a point where Xbox is sort of sitting at the top of the senior leadership table alongside Windows rather than under it.
Yep.
You know, what Phil Spencer did was, and his team, they managed to not only make Xbox fit Nadella's worldview with bringing Xbox to anyone, no matter where they are, using the cloud, but they also anchored the local hardware into the cloud, because you can't get a cloud without having console hardware, because the cloud is made of console hardware.
Correct.
So for all those people who are worried that Microsoft one day will stop selling consoles, why would they? Because all the xCloud server blades is an Xbox console in a different shape. You know, it literally is an Xbox console. The development environment is still Xbox console. If you want to make a game for the cloud, you have to first make it for console, and then it automatically goes to the cloud. So not only have they ensured the future of Xbox local hardware, they've ensured they're future-proofed against a potential shift to the cloud. Also made Satya and his shareholders happy by having this sort of subscription component that can go onto any device. And they did all that in the space of a relatively short space of time.
They did.
And now they've got like all this sort of, they've got all their position, their chips in the right place now, and they just sort of have to execute. And we'll see that over the next few years.
Yeah. You're crushing it, man. I mean, listening to you speak right now is one of the reasons why I respect you so much in the community. Because you see you not only see the nuances of what they've done, but the big picture, right? I'm fortunate. I've said many times that in my actual career, I'm in the technology side and server and infrastructure kind of space. So a lot of the things they've been talking about here with xCloud and everything you just commented on, you know, you can kind of see coming over the past couple of years. And one of the other things you touched on there, which is very important, from local hardware being the same as the hardware in the blades and what that does for game development. What it also does, right, is it gives Microsoft that bargaining chip when you're talking about working with someone like AMD for the hardware itself. Because now you're not relying on just home console sales, right? You're supporting an entire infrastructure that supports the entire global piece of entering that Xbox ecosystem, like you just said. Yeah.
Microsoft is like, the way that all these sort of different pillars of complement each other is quite genius, really. It really is.
Yeah.
The only thing, there are still gaps in the lineup. I still think xCloud's like horribly lacking ergonomics. I really think we need some sort of handheld device, because, you know, UIs don't scale very well to a phone screen, and you know, there are just so many sort of challenges that they still need to overcome to make xCloud more accessible. But they'll meet those challenges. I'm pretty sure they will. But one thing that frustrates me immensely is that, like, so many so-called veteran game journalists, they just don't get it.
No,
they just don't get it.
No,
they don't get what Microsoft's plan is, and they don't, like, I've literally spoke to like veteran journalists who are like, who think that like Microsoft wouldn't want to put Game Pass on other platforms, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, you just have to, you only have to look at Office as an example. The fact that Office is on an iPad and it's not exclusive to Surface. Microsoft literally has an install base of billions with Windows. They don't really need to put Office on an iPad to make tons and tons of money. But if they didn't, their competitors would. So it's kind of like, why wouldn't you put xCloud on a Nintendo Switch, for example?
Yeah.
You know, if Nintendo would allow it. I mean, chances are maybe Nintendo wouldn't want it. But I think like there comes a point where, you know, you mentioned leverage. I'm going to write an editorial this week about how I think the time is now for some sort of Game Pass Lite, which is just xCloud and the Xbox Game Studios and Bethesda games, because Microsoft doesn't have the right to sell other people's games.
Right.
And also Nintendo wouldn't necessarily want to lose sales on games that are in Game Pass that are also being sold on their system. Like, for example, Streets of Rage 4. You can buy that on Nintendo Switch, but if xCloud was on Switch, you wouldn't need to buy it on Switch. But like, if xCloud was the only way you could play Halo on your Switch, then maybe they'd allow it, you know? So I think like some kind of cheaper, light xCloud only version of Xbox Game Pass seems to be the next step for me. To get that, you know, just to get the foot in the door onto those other platforms and stuff, because they've got so much content with the Bethesda deal that they have enough content for Xbox only SKU of Game Pass now. And also it gets you that foot in the door. It's like with Netflix. Like when I first joined Netflix, I was just like, yeah, I only need one stream. I don't need 4K. And now I pay for like the 2 streams and the 4K, and so because all my family want to, you know, steal my Netflix and stuff like that. And same for Spotify. Like I started on Spotify's cheapest plan, and now I'm on like the lossless plan with family stuff, so other people in my family can use it. You know, it's I think like Microsoft's probably always looking at ways they can lower the barrier.
Yes.
And I think that's probably the next step. But.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to reading that. Because it's a very good point, and I think you're probably again spot on. I think you know, one of the things we didn't touch on, which I really appreciate from Microsoft's kind of or Xbox's ecosystem right now, is all of these pieces have come together over the past few years, and the kind of synchronicity between how you enter Xbox and what that looks like is really cool to me. And what I mean by that, for instance, I've been playing a lot of Halo. I'm in a Halo tournament. I'm just a big Halo fan. I'm going through Master Chief Collection again. And so, you know, I was playing on my Xbox the other day, and then, you know, I load up the stream here on my PC, and it's just there, right? You know what I mean? It just syncs to the cloud, everything I was doing, all my unlocks, game saves. And we've seen, you know, I won't even touch on Nintendo because they're so far behind in so many areas from a technical perspective. We don't have time on the show to touch on it. But, you know, even from their competitor in a PlayStation sense, I was talking to someone the other day about something as simple as like screenshots, right? And videos. On a PlayStation, you can upload it to Twitter or you can USB it, but you cannot just go to like PlayStation.com or anywhere online to just pull off your screenshots. And that drives me crazy. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's just one of those things where it's 2021. You're obviously saving them somewhere to a server because you can put it on your activity feed on PlayStation, but there's no just easy go to your profile. It's not attached to your profile. And there's a lot of connectivity there in the Xbox ecosystem that I just love. Like everything's attached to your live profile, your digital library, your Game Pass subscription, your xCloud, all those things are based around what, you know, services are activated, if you will, on your profile. And I love that. That's where it should be in this day and age.
I think Microsoft, like, obviously, they're smart to leverage their cloud prowess.
Of course.
Microsoft's cloud, if projections hold up, Microsoft's cloud could overtake Amazon's in the next few years in terms of size and users. And also, like with the whole Bethesda deal, they have a whole bunch of new tech that can incorporate into GameStack and Azure to deliver services to developers. Like the id Tech engine, I fully expect that will be appropriated and then, you know, packaged and sold to third parties to use. I fully expect that Project Orion algorithm and the research that id has done on streaming to be incorporated into xCloud in the future. Like that, id just has some legendary programmers under there.
Yes, they do.
And one of the project managers at GameStack, one of the lead project managers, I believe, actually came over from id to work for Microsoft. So there's a lot of history between, and like you say, synchronicity between like what Microsoft's doing and all this stuff. Like Gabe Newell back in the day, he specifically used Doom as an example to, you know, Bill Gates and stuff to say Windows really sucks at running games. Can't we improve this? And they use Doom as a baseline to improve the way Windows handled, you know, rendering and graphics and stuff like that. So there's like a common history and a common lineage between like id and Windows and all that technology and stuff. It really is kind of like a homecoming in a way. And also Morrowind had the whole lineage with the original Xbox and stuff like that. It's really cool to see. And
it is,
you know, it's like I say, it's just execution now.
Yes,
it's gonna be a really exciting few years for Xbox, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Could not agree more. The possibilities here, when you just think about everything you just said, the talent combined with the architecture and the services and all the tech, that when you look at them all combined, as you said, it's just, I mean, the possibilities are endless. I can't wait to see what they do next. So let me ask you this, though. You know, we've kind of covered where Xbox is going, Game Pass, and how everything works at a high level, which is all brilliant, as we've both agreed. You personally, you know, do you have any dog in the fight or any preference as to, you know, how you kind of consume your products? Are you still very much I get my console, I buy my game, I need to play it on my home TV, or are you more aligned with kind of I'll access it whatever makes the most sense at the moment, I don't have this huge preference?
Well, like right now, like I said earlier, like I don't think like xCloud is a totally pleasant experience. Like beyond the latency, you also have to deal with Bluetooth. You also have to deal with UIs not scaling very well on a smaller screen. The text is often too small. For games that are built or designed or use the xCloud APIs properly, like Help, for example, they handle pretty well on xCloud, but there's still that sort of uncanny valley where there's some like too much latency introduced into certain games. So I tend to, but the flip side, I never really, it's pandemic. I don't go anywhere.
Right.
So I don't go out. So I'm never really far away from my Xbox. So
yeah, that's fair.
If I was if things were different, if I was like going to meetings at work, like I think Phil said in interviews that he uses like xCloud under the desk while he's like attending meetings and stuff. Or maybe he just told me that in confidence. Oh well, I've outed him now either way.
There you go. It's out now.
Yeah, but if I was doing that, if I was going to meetings, I probably would use xCloud a little bit more. But I also thought the same way about Spotify and stuff back in the day. Like I had a massive DVD collection, like literally like 5,000 DVDs or something. Wow. I used to buy DVDs all the time. Like every time I saw a show and I liked it, I'd be like, yeah, I need to buy that DVD. And I just a few years ago, I just literally donated all of them to charity. Wow. Because I just like, why do I have these DVDs now? They're just gathering dust, and I just use Netflix and YouTube and Disney Plus and BBC iPlayer for any sort of video entertainment. Like I think like I have like a bunch of Blu-rays for stuff that I just can't get in the UK without pirating it, like Twin Peaks and stuff. But for the most part, like most of the stuff I want to watch is easily accessible from a legal service nowadays.
Yeah.
So. And the same goes for Spotify. Like I got piles of CDs lying around, gathering dust. Don't have a CD player anywhere. My laptop doesn't have a CD drive. I suppose I could use my Xbox as a CD player, but who's gonna do that? I got a bunch of vinyls. I got a really good vinyl player, but it's kind of like almost to the point where I'm just like so lazy that rather than put the vinyl on the turntable, I just fire it up on Spotify because my Alexa speaker's right next to my vinyl player and plugged into it. So, so that there might come a day when, you know, xCloud is just so seamless that having local hardware feels almost pointless, you know. Oh. And we've got there with music, and we've gotten there with videos. Like when I stream something from Netflix, it just snaps to 4K instantly because I have a fiber connection. And it's, you know, pretty good. Upstream's pretty lame, but the downstream is more than good enough for 4K video. But, you know, if one day they just started delivering 1 gigabyte internet where I live. Yeah, domestic, and the lowest connection speed you can buy now is 200 megabytes in my street. Okay. When I was a kid, it was like 1 megabyte. You know? And I've been with the same company for internet for like 20 years or more, and every time like they increase their top line speed, they also increase their baseline speed for free. So it's like we've always been on the baseline speed, which used to be 1 megabyte, and then it was 10 megabyte, and then it was 100 megabyte, and then now it's 300 megabytes or whatever. So it just always increases, and technology marches on. So I think like one day if things become so seamless and so convenient that you can just like yell at your TV and fire up a game, and you don't even need to like do anything or not even have local hardware. I mean, chances are that I probably would, but I would like to believe that Microsoft will continue to support retail, even though like, there's an argument to be made that retail sort of like is taking away from the industry rather than providing. But, I'm sure people who work in retail don't feel that way. So I think I don't know depends on the side of the argument people fall on that, but like if retail as it stands today, retail is still extremely important for gaming.
Yes.
So hopefully Microsoft will continue to support retail with local hardware, and for people who want local hardware, I think there's a value in just having local hardware, like if your internet's dead or something. And also there's people still like collecting discs. Like I don't begrudge anyone who likes collecting discs either. Like I still have all my PS1 games, all my PS2 games. Like the other day I was rummaging around in my brother's room and I found like Pokemon Stadium for the N64. Nice. And I found a Sonic 3 cartridge for the Genesis, all the the stickers worn away in that sort of 90s kind of way, but those physical things are just fun to collect sometimes. So I like the idea that they would keep doing it, and the fact that the cloud is powered by Xbox hardware kind of ensures that, I think.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is I don't know. It's not a random way.
So what's next for you, man? I mean, like I've already said multiple times now, it's been a pleasure getting to talk to you more, and the growth is awesome, and the coverage, and love the content. So is there anything like, are you the type of person that kind of thinks out that way, where it's like, okay, next I want to accomplish X, Y, and Z, or are you just kind of taking it as it comes and seeing where it goes?
Yeah, I am always thinking about what's next. I've always been sort of like that. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be an animator for the longest time. I used to make cartoons and in Flash, and the whole sort of the stick men. You might have seen those cartoons. They were big in the early 2000s. Stick Death, where like the little stick men fighting and stuff. I used to make those kind of cartoons. Yeah, and it's really funny. Like all those guys, some of those guys from that community, like made it really big. Like the Cyanide and Happiness comic. I don't know if you know that.
No.
Explosm.net. You will have seen the comic. It's like really big in memes.
Okay.
Like look it up. Cyanide and Happiness.
Okay.
Online.
Find it real quick.
Those guys all used to be part of that Stick Death community, and they made it really big. But I just sort of like I lost patience for it at some point.
Okay. Yeah, but, of course. Yeah, everyone's seen that, right?
Yeah, everyone's seen that. So I sort of like I went from animating cartoons to being addicted to World of Warcraft, but then I wanted to be a musician for a long time. So as I was writing music all the time, and playing guitar and recording and learn sound mixing and stuff like that. And I was like, got bored of that. So I was like, now I'm going to do blogging and stuff like that. And I'm by no means bored of blogging, but I always think about like, what's the next sort of hobby I want to turn into sort of and try and find some success with. So I've actually like started learning C# and Unity game development recently.
I saw some of your posts with Rand and
yeah. I was learning how to like inject like Unity's physics engine onto game objects the other day, and I just added like loads of copies of Rand's head bouncing around on Unity's physics engine. It's like I've been doing that recently, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So I really wish I'd started earlier, because I don't know if I'm going to be like too old and too slow to understand how to do it now. But hopefully, like in 5 years, I can look back and say, man, I'm really glad I started that now, and actually have a product that I can sort of, put on Xbox Live or something.
That's
I don't know. That'd be awesome. But yeah, I'm gonna try and do that. I'm gonna try and make a game. I've already got a game idea. I'm gonna make a shmup.
Yeah, now we're talking. All right.
Yeah. Where you fly in a little spaceship in what I hope is a unique setting. I haven't found any games that have done what I'm planning on doing.
Okay.
So I'm hoping it's still original by the time I finish it. But yeah, that's my next project. I'm gonna make a shmup. I'm gonna put it on Xbox Live.
That's awesome, man. So first, that's incredible. So best of luck, on that endeavor. I know you as well as I do, see a lot of game developers and hear their comments. So it's obviously going to be a big challenge. That'd be great to see it come to fruition. But no, speaking of shmups, man, I mean, I grew up I love shmups. I adore them. It's part of the reason I love Cuphead so much is it's almost like a animated cartoony shmup in a way. I mean, it just has very similar mechanics. But yeah, that's great, man. Do you have any shmups? Like, what made you choose shmup as the genre you want to create? Are you a big fan as well? Did you grow up playing them?
I play I'm honestly not a huge, massive fan of them. Like, I remember when I was a kid, me and my brother used to play this game called Race Storm, I think it was called.
Okay.
On the PS1. That was like a 3D shmup. It was really, really cool. Okay. Obviously, like, Gunstar Heroes had a few shmup levels in it.
Yep.
Ish, or Bullet Hell. I don't know if you want to call it that. But I don't know. I thought like this, based on what I'm learning in this Unity course I'm doing, I figure like it'd be a simple entry level kind of project that's maybe ambitious but not too ambitious, hopefully. Okay. So that's the main reason I chose that genre, because like what I'm learning, I can like imagine in my head how the programming I'm learning would apply to that kind of genre.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'll get you to test it and tell me if it's good.
Yeah, man. Dude, I'd love to. Once you ever get to the point where you've got something that's playable, testable, reach out. I'll be happy to.
Awesome.
So that's cool. Very cool. Well, best of luck with that, man. You touched on something earlier, very early on, that I just wanted to comment. I made a note for myself because I wanted to mention it to you, is what you said about Tim. And, you've had a few times where you felt like you wanted to pack it in, or you just, weren't, whatever it was, kind of wanted to give up on this thing. And I just want to tell you from me that, like I said, what you've done for the community, what you continue to do, the way you go about it, and the way you cover Xbox and Microsoft and the ecosystem from the perspective you do, without all the other nonsense that we see on a daily basis, is really, really appreciated. And I love seeing the growth of it, because for someone like me who runs a site focused on staying away from the bullshit, it's nice to see someone like you experience that growth. So from just a personal note to say, I hope you don't pack it up and keep doing what you're doing, because I think it's appreciated by more people than you may realize.
I really appreciate that, man. Yeah, I always sort of like, sometimes I just get in my head. I think we all do it sometimes, right? Yes. Yeah, like Black Friday last year was really stressful for everyone who worked at my site, because it's like, it's the month of deals. Yeah, and pretty much everyone had like these really long shifts of posting deals, and I was so stressed about it. My resting heart rate was 130 beats per minute.
Jesus,
it was, and I was like, yeah, and, I'm not the healthiest person in the world, but like my resting heart rate right now is about 70. So that was scary.
Yeah.
My resting heart rate was that high, just because of like the stress of covering Cyberpunk and the Xbox Series X launch in the middle of Black Friday craziness, and all hands on deck right about Black Friday deals. And like the way Amazon structures that whole thing is like, you got to push the deal before it sells out, and the lightning deals and stuff like that. Yeah. It was super stressful juggling all of that. And I was just like, this year I've decided I'm going to take it a lot more easy than I did last year.
Good.
Which is working out for me well so far. But And sometimes I go back and see like the DMs that I get and the nice comments, and it really does keep me going. And I think I speak on behalf of all content creators where, you know, your nice comments really do help. You know?
They mean more than people think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really
do. You know, if you like a YouTube video, if you like a web article, try and leave a nice comment, because you know, people that feel more motivated to leave a negative comment for whatever reason. I always try and leave nice comments, and you know, I like your content too, man. And you know, you're far better at conducting interviews than I am. I was just thinking, like, wow, he left a note to ask me a question. That's pretty smart. I'm so bad at interviews, man. You have no idea. But you know, it's just awesome the way the community supports each other, and you know,
yeah. No, I echo all the time. Exactly that point, that for content creators, a simple like, and especially a comment, a note, a tweet, whatever it is, right? Where it's just something saying that someone appreciated something that we worked on, whether it be an article, a video, it doesn't matter. It goes a lot farther than people realize. And it means an awful lot. I literally have, no joke, and I don't care if this sounds goofy or not, I literally have screenshots of like when I first started Season Gaming and I first started to get some traction, and like Phil or Aaron or what's his name? Oh God, Wysop over at Sony, the indie studio head. You know, anyone like that, industry related, that made a comment or shared it or just said something nice. Like I have screenshots of that. It made my day at the time, knowing that something I created, you know, kind of elicited that type of response. So
yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And like, I think like it's important to not take that for granted. I think like when some content creators, like there comes a point where you sort of, I think some people get comfortable with it, and they sort of like forget that, you know, the things you say and the things you do can have a really negative impact on other people.
Yes.
Like I always desperately try and remember that I am writing about the work of tons of engineers, developers, and artists, and people who are passionate and skilled, and they've spent their lives learning these crafts. I'm always really cognizant of the fact that I have to balance telling people whether something's worth their money against, you know, respecting the hard work that went into the product. And I think like it's important to do that.
100%.
You know,
I think that's what drove me crazy about the Cyberpunk launch.
I hated that so much.
Yeah, it really pissed me off, because everything you just said, right? I get the issues. We need to talk about them, etc. I get all that. But there's a way to do it the right way versus the way many people and even outlets handled it.
I think like the Cyberpunk thing was really frustrating, because beneath the weird anomalies, should we call them, there is a tremendously heartfelt game there.
Correct.
Like I literally bumped my review score up after doing that one particular quest that, you know, had Radiohead's music in the title, Pyramid Song, I think the quest was called. Because it's near the end of the, I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't experienced it, but there's some like incredible side quests in that game.
There are,
that are just like just magical. And like I did this one quest and I was just like, man, this game deserves 10 out of 10. You know, I've given, well, we don't call it 10 out of 10, we call it 5 out of 5. It's annoying because we don't grade games on like a 100% scale, because we can only grade them on like half points.
Okay.
So like I couldn't give it like a 9.75 out of 10. I couldn't drop it because of the bugs. But
yeah,
like I say, I played on PC, which was pretty respectable, to be honest. I played buggier games. And I think a lot of people were expecting this to be Grand Theft Auto in the future. But it was never in my mind that it was going to be a Grand Theft Auto clone. It was always in my mind that it was going to be a Witcher game. And I don't know, people wanted something different from that game, I think. But yeah, that whole thing was just like a complete circus and a freak show.
Yes. It was.
So much clickbait, so much things taken out of context.
For weeks and weeks, too. I mean, it went on, and it just, yeah. I to your point, like, I was thinking about if you're an artist on that game, and some of the artwork in that game is effing phenomenal.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
And, just all kinds of stuff, dialogue and quest design, like you just said, all these things, right? Take tens and tens and tens of people each. And to just see all these articles all day long. I mean, we saw some of the leads at CD Projekt Red posting that they had to take breaks and stuff because it was getting to them. And it's like, nobody deserves that. It's frustrating.
It was horrible, man.
Yeah.
There is blame to be leveraged.
Yes.
Like the execs who were on the record as saying, we're surprised by the quality of the base console builds. Like they said that in like October or something, or September, something to that effect.
Yes, I know what
paraphrasing. But it was a learning experience for me because I'd played The Witcher 3 and I'd seen that launch in a pretty rough state and I'd seen them polish up. And I took what they said on faith, and I shouldn't have done, but I did. And I assumed that, I didn't expect the delta between the Xbox and PlayStation versions to be so big against the build I played on PC. But it is what it is. I learned my lesson. But but the amount of vitriol and the people forgetting that, it's not like it's not anyone's fault except the people who decided to ship the game. Correct. It should have just been delayed again.
Yep.
They should have given more time, It's like that famous quote where they say, is it Shigeru Miyamoto?
Miyamoto's quote. Yeah.
About, not to ship games too early.
Yeah. I think it's a bad game is always a bad game, whereas a delayed game will be eventually good. Something like that. Yeah.
They should have just delayed it and just not set a launch date. Kind of like, I feel like what the devs of Techland are doing with Dying Light 2 right now is directly influenced by CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk, by the fact they're not giving us a launch date.
Yeah,
is hard evidence of the fact that it's the game. They want the game to be polished and ready before they announce one.
Yeah.
They're doing a dev update for Dying Light 2 this week, I believe. Yeah. But they've already said not to expect a launch date. Yeah. And I think that is direct result of seeing what happened with Cyberpunk. So,
I mean, Xbox made the same decision with Infinite, right? I mean,
yes.
This isn't in the state that we want it to be in, and it'll come out next year. And even as they've given us great monthly updates, I mean, I'm a Halo guy, so I'm pumped. But even as they've given us the new pictures and updates and all this information, they still haven't set a date other than holiday.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough balancing act to balance the needs. Well, I say needs, the expectations of shareholders against retail pipeline and organizing all these logistics and trying to line that up with, programming and issues that can arise unexpectedly of having to port the game to several different platforms. I think the fact that they built Cyberpunk to be a next gen game and then tried to port it backwards was a big mistake.
Yes.
They built a game for SSDs and then tried to make it work on a hard drive. It just I don't know. It was just bad time for everyone involved.
I can only imagine how frustrated some of those engineers must have been during that process.
Yeah.
Gosh.
They should have they should have delayed the base games or just canceled them. I mean, maybe they can't cancel them, but they could have at least delayed them. I believe some cross-gen games did that, whereas I'm not sure if Titanfall did that. But there were games that came out on Xbox One and Xbox. The Xbox 360 version came out a little bit later and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess there's a lot of hindsight 2020.
Of course, of course. But I mean, the point is, we were talking about the people behind the games, and which translates in a way to the people behind content is what we were talking. Started on that. We got on our Cyberpunk kick because I know you enjoyed it as much as I did. I mean, it was my game of the year last year, despite the
game of the year last year easily.
Yeah,
I absolutely loved it.
Me too.
Sure, there was issues within the parts where I was really frustrated with the bugs. There was one mission where you have to infiltrate a warehouse, and all the enemies just kept aggroing me for no reason. Like I'm trying to play stealthy, and they just all aggro. The whole base would aggro for no reason. When I stepped into like, it was like an invisible sort of trigger that just triggered them all to become alerted, and that was so incredibly annoying. But it wasn't game breaking, and I feel like other games have gotten away with bigger game breaking issues, like Skyrim, for example. Skyrim had like literal bugs which would stop you from progressing the game and stop you from completing it.
Yep.
I never really encountered that with Cyberpunk.
No, me neither.
And I did every side quest practically, except for like that collect all the rogue cars quest. I didn't do that.
Oh, you didn't do that one? That one's actually kind of funny because each one has like either a goofy or it has its own personality. So each one is different. So.
I just hate driving.
Fair enough.
Oh man, I have to drive again.
Fair enough. Well, man, I'll tell you what, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've been talking for over an hour and a half. It doesn't feel like it. I've enjoyed the stories. I've enjoyed the insight. And like I said, multiple times throughout this chat is you're crushing it in terms of just your perspective. And I would say understanding. It's nice to see that understanding of Xbox's direction, the ecosystem, the hardware, kind of the whole picture, right? Because as you said, there's a lot of sites and journalists out there that just don't get it. And it's frustrating when you look at some of the bigger places that don't get it. But you and the group at WC definitely do. And it's refreshing. So
I think we do have an advantage in the sense that we only cover Microsoft. We don't have to like think about what PlayStation is doing and what Nintendo's doing. And I think like a lot of journalists get into the weeds and trying to like fit Xbox into a PlayStation box and like be like, well, PlayStation's more popular and it's doing it this way. That means Xbox is wrong,
right?
Unable to sort of, mentally materialize the fact that
they can't they can't separate the two.
Yeah, it's possible for two different approaches here. There's enough room in the industry for two different approaches. I saw there was a lot of Nintendo Switch skepticism when that launched too. Like even I was like, "What the hell is that system?" Like,
sometimes I still say that.
There was when they announced that console, they did the whole young millennials playing party games on a roof with the Joy-Cons and stuff, and I was thinking no one's gonna play it like that, but I literally have played it like that at the party. Like, and I was like, oh my god, Nintendo was right. They were right all along, so Nintendo, it just goes to show that it's like, sorry, go on.
No, I think sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think you were going to say that there's different approaches that can be successful, right?
Yeah.
And each, honestly, if you look at Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, the big three, as we call them, right? They each are being extremely successful in three very different ways. And it's just, it's crazy. But Nintendo as a whole, we could have a whole conversation about Nintendo and because they're an anomaly to me. It's just absolutely incredible what they're doing right now, and to me none of it really clicks. Like, I understand it's just not my thing, but it's impressive.
Yep.
But anyway, man, so I want to thank you for agreeing to sit down and chat with me. It's just a pleasure getting to speak to people like yourself, and for someone like me who really enjoys these conversations and just getting insight from people all around the industry, different outlets, different perspectives. It's fantastic. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Like I say, you're much better at interviewing than I am, and this was awesome.
Okay, great, man. No, thank you so much. So anything before we wrap up? Anything you want to shout out?
Nah, just like shout out to the amazing team at Windows Central. Like, a lot of people, I'm the Windows Central guy, but there is a big team at Windows Central who covers the news day to day, like Samuel Tolbert and Zachary Body and Miles on the YouTube channel. And, we've got another Zachary Cuevas who does a lot of our guides content. And, Nicholas Downey recently joined the team,
Yeah.
and Jared Eden. We got Brendan Lowry covering Halo. We got a really big team of really passionate writers across the board. And they're all doing an amazing job. So shout out to them.
Fantastic. Yeah, Nick was just on our show on Saturday. So
nice.
yeah, we talk quite a bit too. Good, really good dude. So yeah, congratulated him on that because that was a big passion for him, like you said. So fantastic. Well, great, man. So thanks again. Obviously, I'll be in touch, and yeah, wish you all the best. I can't wait to see this shmup, man. I'm looking forward to playing it.
Hell yeah.
All right, brother. That was Industry Perspectives with Jez Corden from Windows Central, and we will see you next time. Peace.